Hey, what is going on? It is Crypto Bobby, and today Bitcoin hit an all-time high, which was fantastic to see. But in the past couple of hours is actually selling off down a little bit after Bitcoin was pushing up to around the $12,000 range. We can zoom in a little bit here, but Bitcoin was pushing up to close to $12,000, $11,900 or so. Since sold off all the way in the past 2 hours, all the way down to $10,800, which was interesting to see that quick drop and fairly quick recovery on that sell-off. But outside of talking about the big Bitcoin movement today in general and the new all-time high that is established, I want to talk about Bitcoin versus fiat trading pairings and what might be important, what you should take into consideration, because a lot of people have different opinions on this. They approach their crypto investments or their trading in different manners, and especially if you are new to the crypto space, this is something that might be a little bit confusing to you and might be something that you want to really better understand or better study on your own. And I want to, in some cases, kind of open up the door a little bit here to start that conversation off. And a lot of it, quite frankly, came down to a tweet, or the idea for this video in a lot of cases was sparked by Ran Neu-Ner, who is the host of CNBC Africa, I believe CNBC South Africa's crypto trader. He has a TV show on CNBC Africa, and he tweeted this out and said, "The Bitcoin dilemma. I made a train into an altcoin using 5 Bitcoin back when Bitcoin was $4,000, i.e. I bought $20,000 worth of that altcoin. I sold that altcoin today at 3.1 Bitcoin or $33,600. Did I make a profit or a loss?" And I think this is a really interesting tweet, and the replies and responses are very interesting as well. But when I'm looking at this, I think a couple different things. Well, number one, you took $20,000 and you turned that into $33,000. So sounds great in theory, but when you're looking at this, you have to think about what is the opportunity cost for making that trade? What is the opportunity cost for not simply holding Bitcoin? Because that 5 Bitcoin that were at $4,000, you spent $20,000. That 5 Bitcoin is now worth about $55,000 and change. So while you technically made a profit with that altcoin of $13,600 in fiat currency, you actually lost about $20,000 in opportunity cost because you simply didn't hold Bitcoin. And when I look at this, I think a couple different things. I think this is something that you should really take as an example when you're looking at potentially investing in altcoins, because a lot of people look at altcoins and they say, wow, you know, this is going to be the next Bitcoin, this is going to be the next Ethereum, this is going to be the next big cryptocurrency. But there is certainly some added risk when you invest in a smaller cryptocurrency. There's also the opportunity cost that you could potentially be losing out if Bitcoin makes Bitcoin makes a strong run and Bitcoin outgains the cryptocurrency that you are investing in, which is exactly what happened for Ron's case here with this trade. Now, you can look at it in a couple different ways from a taxation perspective. I actually voted on this being a loss from an opportunity cost perspective, but from a taxation perspective, I think you're going to have a tough time arguing, depending upon what jurisdiction you're in and all that stuff. I mean, that's going to be a profit when you do sell that into fiat. But the big thing here is that you would have been better off holding those 5 Bitcoin and not putting them into the altcoin, because you would have made, if you sold that Bitcoin back into fiat, your Bitcoin would now be worth $55,000 or a little bit over that in comparison to the $33,000 you sold that Bitcoin at. And you actually lost on the trade. If your goal here is to stack Bitcoin, is to make more Bitcoin, or is to increase your Bitcoin holdings, you actually lost 1.9 Bitcoin. So you had a pretty significant loss. Your altcoin didn't perform well. The only thing that really propped up the price of the altcoin was the fact that Bitcoin, over doubled during the course of this trade. So this is something that when you are evaluating altcoins, you really want to keep in mind. Is this something that you think it can outperform Bitcoin? Because if it can't, you might be better off holding Bitcoin. A lot of people talk about hodl, and all this type of stuff. In this case, it wasn't better to hodl that altcoin. It would have been better to move that back into Bitcoin and recognize that it wasn't a great trade early on. And when I'm looking at this, one of the good ways I think to do it, to evaluate this, is in 2 aspects. So number one, On-chain FX is really quick in terms of the quick 24-hour changes, but that doesn't always give you the best long-term visualization of this. But if you're looking at certain things, one of the things I look at is what's the change versus the US dollar, but also what's the change versus Bitcoin, because something could have a really nice run versus the US dollar, but it could be lagging behind Bitcoin, as was the case with the tweet that Ron had. Now, you can sort things on a US dollar basis, but you can also sort things on a change versus Bitcoin. And this is one of the big things that you want to look at depending upon how you approach your investing. Are you trying to simply make more money in fiat? Are you trying to increase your Bitcoin holdings on a consistent basis, which is really what I'm more about, is increasing Bitcoin holdings, potentially increasing the Ethereum holdings there as well. But if something long-term can't outperform Bitcoin, then that's something you really want to look at, is whether or not it might be worth holding, because there is, like I said, that clear opportunity cost, that $20,000 difference. Now, how do you see if something outside of just the 24-hour change, how do you see if something is outperforming Bitcoin or what that might look like? The easiest thing is typically that simply put the Bitcoin trading pairings. If we pop over here to ETH versus Bitcoin, this is one of the things that you want to, we can pull this up on a one-day chart here. And this is one of the things where you zoom out and you could see that in a lot of respects, Ethereum in the past 3 months really, or beyond that, basically since Ethereum peaked in June, it has slowly, and in some cases pretty quickly lost its steam to the Bitcoin trading pairing, and it's been much better to simply hold Bitcoin in the past 5 months or so than it has been to hold Ethereum. Have you made potential gains with buying Ethereum down maybe at $200 and right now at $450? Yeah, but in that course as well, you could have potentially bought Bitcoin at $3,000 or at $2,500 or whatever it might be. So that's something I think that it's really important to evaluate and look, especially as you're new to the space, because a lot of people out there will get into the crypto world and they'll look and say, I want to find, maybe I'm going to put some money into Bitcoin, but I also want to put some money into Ripple and into Neo and into whatever other cryptocurrency that you might be looking at. You have to look long term. Is it something that could potentially outpace the gains of Bitcoin on a Bitcoin trading pairing? Or are you better off simply holding Bitcoin? And in some cases, in a lot of cases, you really are, at least historically in the past 6 months. Granted, the previous to that, there was a really, really strong altcoin run. But in the past few months, it has been, in many cases, much better to simply hold on to Bitcoin. So I would highly encourage you to do some due diligence on your end when you are looking at this Bitcoin dilemma and how you consider profits. Just because you made, in this case, $13,000, you started off with $20,000 and you sold for $33,000. Just because you made $13,000 didn't mean that was necessarily the right move. You actually lost Bitcoin, which are now worth significantly more than you had before, and you would have been better off just holding on to that cryptocurrency. I think that's something that is a key differentiator, and just if you're familiar with any other types of markets out there, it's not something that it's an added wrinkle and it's an added complexity, because there really aren't any other, I don't think there's many other similar scenarios to this where you have fiat and then you have crypto and then you have another type of crypto, and usually that Bitcoin or Ethereum's in the middle. But a lot of times the benchmark to how something performs in crypto is how does it perform against Bitcoin, and what is that performance against the benchmark. Now, are there certain cryptos that can outperform Bitcoin and that can give you much greater, more outsized returns to Bitcoin? Absolutely. And I'm by no means telling you here that this is the only scenario where Bitcoin always does well and all the altcoins don't do well. I just wanted to make this point that simply because you make money on a fiat basis, simply because you made money US dollar wise, doesn't necessarily mean that it's always the right move, and that's something that you should be cognizant of going into the future so that you can be a better investor, trader, or whatever you want to consider yourself. That's something that I think is a key difference maker moving forward. Outside of that, it has been a really interesting weekend in the crypto markets. A couple of big time movements, as you've seen. IOTA has really crushed it lately, hit an all-time high in the past day. Augur has had a pretty nice movement in the past day. ARK, Ardor, a number of cryptos have hit their all-time high in the past day. So it's been one heck of a run. Litecoin as well. Salt making a really, really strong movement. So there have been a number of cryptos where people have done pretty well in the past couple of days. I've been keeping an eye on a few of these. I haven't made any specific movements on them, but definitely keeping an eye on whether or not some of these cryptos can continue to outperform Bitcoin, because as you can see here, something like IOTA in the past, if you made a trade on IOTA, you could have increased your Bitcoin stack by 30%, 25%, 20%, whatever it might be, if that's your end goal. It could also be simply holding that cryptocurrency for the long term. But definitely something I wanted to make that point of. I would be interested to hear what you consider this situation, how you consider this, Bitcoin dilemma, this discussion that Ron started. I will post a link directly to this tweet in the YouTube and podcast description if you want to just take a look at that, take a look at some of the comments and what some of the people are talking about in this scenario. Would love to hear your thoughts, whether you consider that a profit, whether you consider that a loss. I don't want to get too much into the taxation of it because there's a lot of different jurisdictions and there's a lot of different approaches of that. So I don't want to get too much into that, but just from an overall perspective, we'd love to hear what you guys are thinking on this as well. Outside of that, if you are new to the channel by any chance, my name is Crypto Bobby. I do daily videos on the subject of cryptocurrency, as well as YouTube Live Crypto Happy Hours, where I hop in, usually talk for an hour or two on YouTube Live, take as many questions as possible. So hit the subscribe button, the little notify bell next to that, so that the next time I do have a video that comes out or I go on YouTube Live, you're able to join from the beginning, get that little notification. So would really appreciate that if you aren't already subscribed. Thank you so much for your time. Look forward to your feedback on this Bitcoin dilemma, the Bitcoin trading pairing versus fiat trading pairing, and wish you the best of luck in the markets, whether you're buying, trading, holding, selling. Crypto Bobby signing out. Peace.